What they gonna say now? What are they gonna say now? Texas dominates Michigan in the big house, 31-12.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis and Lacey Butler, your hosts. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, 31-12 in the biggest environment in college football. Texas goes on the road and dominates a top 10 team, the defending national champion Michigan Wolverines. So the biggest takeaways from Texas absolutely smoking Michigan in this game today on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Longhorn Nation, what are they going to say now? What are they going to say now, right? Last year, we went on the road and beat Alabama. They said this isn't the same Alabama team. That's the only reason Texas went on the road and won that game, right? Then they said Texas would have to do it one more year after Texas made it to the playoffs, after they won the Big 12. After they went 12-2, they said Texas would have to do it for one more year before they could believe, right? They said if Texas didn't go out there and dominate Michigan, what would it really mean? Because this is a bad Michigan team. We saw the spread go from -3.5 to -7.5. I mean, the spread could have gone to -15.5. It wouldn't have mattered, right? Because good teams win, but great teams cover. And once again, Texas absolutely went in the big house and dominated. Texas is for real and a completely different beast than Fresno State. And the Michigan Wolverines and 100,000 people in the stands just found that out. What are they going to say now about the Texas Longhorns? Other than we're here and we're a force to be reckoned with. And everybody, whether you love Texas or hate Texas, whatever your opinion on Texas is, you have to recognize that this is one of the best football teams in the country, bar none. What are they going to say now? Nothing. That's what they're going to say now. Nothing, right? Just an exceptional performance from this football team on both sides of the ball. Forgive me if I got to look at my phone. I got a bunch of notes in here, right? You know what I'm saying? So exceptional performance from this football team on both sides of the ball. Just exceptional poise from this football team going into one of the biggest stadiums in college football and just treating it like a home game, right? I mean, just treating it like they weren't worried or scared about who was on the other side of the ball. They absolutely went into the big house and made it their house. Once again, beating Michigan 31-12. Today, I thought, there's so many great performances on both sides of the ball, but you have to start with the quarterback, right? Quinn Ewers was masterful in this game. Any questions that NFL evaluators may have had, I think he answered a lot of those today, right? Just what a storyline from Quinn Ewers, right? The quarterback from Ohio State that comes to the University of Texas. And Ohio State has not beat Michigan since Quinn Ewers left, right? And so, Ohio State, Quinn Ewers leaves. They can't beat Michigan. And now Quinn Ewers, the former Ohio State quarterback, goes into the big house and beats Michigan on the way to a magical season for the University of Texas this year. So just a special performance from Quinn, 24 of 36 for 246 yards and 3 touchdowns. Of course, things slowed down a little bit in the second half, but he did his work in the first half, and the game was already out of hand by then. On top of the stat line, right? Of course, you see the 3 touchdowns, the 246 yards. He was special, right? The poise that he showed in the pocket and against the rush, right? He's going against Josiah Stewart. He's going against Mason Graham. He's going against Kenneth Grant, some of the best defensive linemen in the country. And Quinn Ewers walked into the big house once again like it was his house. Like I said, just, showed his poise, was able to stand in the pocket, make some special throws today, and was really good against that rush, the blitz, whatever Wink Martindale threw at him. Him and Steve Sarkisian were able to answer all of those questions. His ability to use his legs, right, to run for first downs, but to also navigate the pocket, right? He was moving around, evading the rush, buying extra time for his receivers and making those plays down the field. And then, when you look at it, his ability to constantly make the right plays and go through progressions on some of the game's biggest plays, right? Find the open wide receiver, constantly make the right reads, and just deliver the ball down the field and continuously move this Texas offense against one of the better defenses in the country. In my eyes, we already knew Quinn Ewers was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. We already knew Quinn Ewers was a bona fide Heisman candidate, but he grew up today in a big way. And I know NFL evaluators, they were all watching this game. They are looking at a special quarterback coming from the University of Texas. I thought Quinn Ewers grew up in a big way. I mentioned on the show last week, right, talking about the running backs. There was a lot of question marks coming into the season about our running backs when you lose a guy like Christian Clark, when you lose a guy like Cedric Baxter, when, a week before the season, there's only 3 scholarship running backs on the team. But after watching this team against Colorado State, I said that, this system, Steve Sarkisian's system, is running back friendly, right? He's had great running backs, and so they get a lot of the credit. But there's a reason he's had 1,000-yard rusher every year since he was at Washington. And then you look at it today in a big matchup against a really big defense, Jaden Blue, Jarrett Gibson, Trey Wisner, even though none of them really went off individually, they all made great plays, but none of them just had a spectacular game individually. Of course, Jaden Blue missed some snaps because of that injury he had to his ankle. He had to get taped up. 140 total yards combined between Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, and Jarrett Gibson. So like I said, none of them individually just popped or did anything amazing, but they were steady, right? They kept Texas on the field. They continued to get third down conversions. They continued to move the ball down the field, and then Texas put the ball in the end zone when they needed to. So like I said, this system is really running back friendly. There's a reason that, Steve Sarkisian and Texas continue to have these 1,000-yard rushers, continue to put running backs in the National Football League. And we saw today, Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, and Jarrett Gibson were more than enough for this running game to carry Texas to a huge victory over the Michigan Wolverines. But none of that happens, right? None of that happens between Jarrett Gibson, Trey Wisner, and Jaden Blue without a special performance from the offensive line, right? We know that Kelvin Banks is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. We just expect him to come in and week out and do what he does, right? But one of the biggest matchups in this game was going to be their defensive line versus our offensive line, right? I thought coming into the game, that's why a lot of people predicted Texas to win big, because Texas has so many advantages against this Michigan team. But one of the few advantages that Michigan had against Texas was that interior defensive line, right? Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, even Josiah Stewart coming off the edge, right? But you're talking about those two big guys in the middle. How would Jake Majors, Hayden Conner, and Devon Campbell hold up against Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, right? And not only did they hold up, they dominated that matchup, right? Jake Majors, Hayden Conner, and Devon Campbell absolutely dominated that matchup and allowed our running backs to just continuously eat up yards, continue to get first downs. I mean, there was at one point where they were just gashing them down the field for 7, 8, 9 rushing yards at a time. So in a game where I thought Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham would really show up, right, it was Jake Majors and Hayden Conner that really shut them down and allowed our Texas running backs to run the ball at a high level and kept Quinn Ewers poised, right? Because we've seen at times Quinn Ewers in the past could kind of falter a little bit under pressure. I thought he did so well today under that pressure, but they made it, they did a really good job of making sure that he wasn't running for his life today, that pressure wasn't coming up the middle. They held their own in the passing game and in the running game is one of the biggest reasons why Texas won that game. Returning 4 or 5 starters, one of the best offensive lines in the country. They had a big matchup today, a huge matchup today, and they absolutely showed out. So credit to Jake Majors and Hayden Conner, because, I mean, who would have thought, right? Who would have thought in the offseason that Jake Majors and Hayden Conner would dominate Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant? And that's exactly what you saw today. So just some special performances from the quarterback, the running backs, and our offensive line. Quick word from our sponsors. Then we get into the pass catchers. Then, of course, the defense, and then some final takeaways. Just everybody was special today against Michigan in this game. Coming into the game, we're thinking that, the wide receiver is going to have a big day, especially after what we saw last week. And we're thinking, like, who is it going to be? Is it going to be Isaiah Bond? Is it going to be Matthew Golden? Is it going to be Ryan Wingo, right? Which wide receiver was going to really put their imprint on the game today? And the pass catcher that really showed out for the Texas Longhorns was Gunnar Helm, right? And a day after Jatavian Sanders, who Gunnar Helm patiently sat behind for a couple years at the 40 acres, a day after Jatavian Sanders is named the starter for the Carolina Panthers at tight end. Can't wait to watch him this season. Gunnar Helm established himself as one of the best tight ends in the country today, and he showed that while Jatavian Sanders is about to start making plays in the National Football League right now, Gunnar Helm will be in the National Football League next year making those same type of plays. Just a special performance from Gunnar Helm today. 7 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. I believe the 98 yards was a career high for him. They said on the broadcast his biggest game last year was 67 yards. So he absolutely showed out today. And I love the way that he made himself available to Quinn Ewers, right? We know tight ends are always security blankets, and they're always going to be in the middle of the field or close to the line of scrimmage, most times, and be available, for the quarterback, right? And I thought, so often today he found his way into those zones, won his one-on-one matchups, and just was available to Quinn Ewers when Quinn Ewers needed him. And then on top of that, when Quinn Ewers found him with the ball, he would catch it and then make plays after the catch, right? Breaking tackles, just fighting to get those extra yards, getting those first downs, and then once again, continuously moving the ball down the field, especially on that first drive, right? Where, Texas was kind of still settling into their offense. He had a huge catch that moved the ball down the field. So Gunnar Helm was special today. Like I said, said, 98 yards and a touchdown. And he showed why he's one of the best tight ends in the country. Steve Sarkisian continuously has talked about how tight end is, the second most important position in this offense. And based on what we saw today, Gunnar Helm was a huge reason for that. Then you have to talk about the run blocking as well. It's not just the offensive line. It's what Gunnar Helm can do out there as a blocker that allows our running backs to flourish in Steve Sarkisian's system as well. You talk about the wide receivers, right? And, we saw the full influx of talent last week when our wide receivers absolutely showed out, right? Going 6-7 deep, 9 players catching a pass in the first half and just absolutely dominating Colorado State. And obviously, we didn't see the everybody eats mentality today at the wide receiver position. You had to shorten the rotation, put your best players out there in such a big game of this magnitude. But I thought the wide receivers we did call upon, right? I think only 2 wide receivers may have had a catch. Maybe 3, right? I know DeAndre Moore had 1 call back. That was a touchdown. Then Jonte Cook had 1 that was called back on a holding, right? But when we went to the wide receivers, they made huge plays today. Isaiah Bond, only 3 catches for 51 yards, but 2 of those going for third down conversions, including that huge play on the first drive, even though we didn't score because Bert Auburn missed the field goal. That huge, 33-yard play on third down on the first drive where Quinn Ewers kind of rolled to the right, threw the ball, and just kind of dropped a dime in between 2 defenders to Isaiah Bond, and he dove and made a tough catch, right? That was one of the biggest plays of the game. I thought the passing offense really settled in after that. I thought Quinn Ewers really settled in after that. So that was a huge play in the game. Isaiah Bond made that catch. And then he also had another third down on that drive where he had a wide receiver screen, right? Where the running back, I think it was Jaden Blue, kind of flexed out to the right. And then they went kind of inside to the wide receiver screen to Isaiah Bond. So he picked up 2 crucial third downs on that first drive. And like I said, I really thought that settled down Quinn Ewers in the passing offense, even though they didn't score on that drive. Matthew Golden was 6 catches for 41 yards, including maybe the best offensive play of the day. The touchdown before the half after the fumble by Colston Loveland. Where Quinn Ewers just rolled to the left, squared up his body, and threw an absolute dart to the left pylon, where Matthew Golden came back on the comeback route and got his foot in for the touchdown to put Texas up. I think at that point was 17-6 or 24-6, whatever it was, 24-3, I think at that point. I don't know. The game was over in the first half, whatever it was, right? That was a crucial touchdown that essentially put the dagger in Michigan before halftime. And then Ryan Wingo after the half, right, with the 55-yard run, really good fake, and then reverse toss to Ryan Wingo. 55-yard run that put them in a position to go up 31-6 and essentially put the dagger in Michigan if they aren't, they weren't already cooked by then. So, like I said, there weren't huge plays for the wide receivers. None of them went crazy. We didn't see 6-7 wide receivers catch a ball like we did against Colorado State. But Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and Ryan Wingo all made huge plays that really put their stamp on the game today. So just so much talent at the wide receiver position, and they certainly showed up when it mattered. Now, moving on to the defensive side of the ball, right? I've talked for 12 minutes about how great the offense was today, and they were special. But, when you only give up 12 points, right, and, they got that garbage touchdown at the end, right? When you only give up 12 points to Michigan, even though it's not a great offense, they did score 30 last week, 23 of those on the offensive side of the ball. That's a special performance, right? And this is a defense that some people had question marks about, right? People talked about how the defense could be the Achilles heel of the team this year, or they could hold, the offense back, right? And 2 games into the season, this defense has only given up 1 touchdown. And like I said, it was in garbage time at the end. He really didn't even get in the end zone. His body, he got the ball over the pylon, but he really didn't even get in the end zone, right? So just a special performance from the defense today. They forced 3 turnovers and scored 10 points off of those turnovers, right? And so that's what great defenses do. They force turnovers, get the ball back to their offense to give more opportunities to the offense, and they certainly took advantage of those opportunities, scoring 10 points off of those turnovers. Coming into this game, right? Michigan only had a few paths to victory, and that's why so many people predicted Texas to win big. That's why the spread jumped to -7.5, and of course, Texas covered that twice, essentially. But Michigan's only real path to victory was being able to dominate with the ground game and keeping Texas off the field. Texas held Michigan to 80 total rushing yards today, right? 80 total rushing yards today. Colorado State was more productive on the ground than the Michigan Wolverines at home today against the Texas Longhorns. So a huge shout out to this defensive line. And Donovan Edwards at this point, you have to question why he was even on the cover of NCAA 25. I mean, is Donovan Edwards the most overrated player in college football right now, right? Only 27 total yards against Fresno State, only 43 total yards against Texas. He has 70 yards total on the season right now through 2 games, right? But nonetheless, a big reason why Donovan Edwards couldn't dominate today is because he was going against one of the best defensive units, one of the best defensive lines in the country, and the Texas Longhorns absolutely shut him down. Once again, Donovan Edwards only 43 yards today only 70 yards through the first 2 games. Yeah, he should have put Coach Prime or Shador or somebody else on the cover. I mean, even Pete Kakowski at this point, NCAA 25, because Donovan Edwards not looking like a superstar to me, right? The defensive line deserves a ton of credit for winning that matchup really from the first snap and forcing Michigan to be a passing offense. And we knew if Michigan had to pass the ball, they had absolutely no shot in winning this game. Davis Warren, bless his heart, he's not good, right? Alex Orji, you saw it, right? They said it on the broadcast, 90% chance they're going to run the ball when Alex Orji comes into the game. They had no shot, I mean, period, probably trying to score, as many points as Texas could or match Texas score for score. But especially when you turn Michigan into a passing offense, they had absolutely no shot of winning this game. And the biggest reason that happened is because our defensive line absolutely did not let them run the ball and get into a rhythm, especially with that young offensive line. Also credit to Colin Simmons, right? We saw last year Anthony Hill kind of had his big coming out party as a true freshman in the second game against Alabama. The year before that, we saw Kelvin Banks, kind of have his big coming out party against Alabama in the second game. And I thought this year, kind of Ryan Wing already had his big coming out party last week. But Colin Simmons, the only, defensive player today to get a sack. And then, in garbage time where Michigan was just throwing the ball repeatedly over and over again, just trying to get Davis Warren some confidence going into next week, I guess, right? Colin Simmons got that one sack, but he was continuously, getting into the backfield and then pushing Davis Warren out of the pocket and making him make some tougher throws. So a really good, kind of first big game for Colin Simmons today. Once again, the linebacker unit was elite. Anthony Hill, David Bender just flying around the field, making plays, absolutely shutting down that run game, in conjunction with the defensive line. And then the secondary for the second straight week looks much improved from last year. Andrew Makuba, in his first big game, at the University of Texas, was just absolutely dominant today. Interceptions, tackles for loss, making pass deflections. He was all over the field and showed why he was such a good defender at the University of Clemson. One of the biggest pickups in the portal, and he certainly, validated that decision today, which is a huge performance against Michigan. Jahdae Barron picked up the fumble that allowed Texas to get 7 more points before half. Derek Williams had a turnover. He was great at the safety position. Michael Taft on special teams and at the safety position, he was special. And then Jalen Gilbo in the star position, finally healthy, made a ton of plays around the line of scrimmage. So only giving up 12 points, only giving up 1 touchdown in the garbage time. The defense as a whole, right? Pete Kakowski's unit in year 4 looks special today against Michigan. And that's why Texas, once again, made the big house their house. A quick word from our sponsors. And then my final takeaways in a dominant win in one of the biggest games of the college football season today for the Longhorns. Yeah, so my final takeaways, Texas absolutely outclassed Michigan, all right? They absolutely outclassed Michigan today. It was not close, and they looked like 2 completely different football teams on that football field. Texas had 19 first downs to 13 first downs for the Michigan Wolverines, 10 third down conversions to 3 third down conversions for Michigan, right? Michigan had 2 fourth down conversions and 3 third down conversions. So Texas had double the third down conversions that Michigan had on third and fourth down, right? And they went for a lot of them. Outgained them 389 to 284 yards in yardage, held the ball for 3 more minutes, 31 minutes to 28 minutes for Michigan, even though I felt like Michigan had the ball for the entire fourth quarter and just kind of, just like I said, we're just racking up a bunch of garbage time stats. Texas still went in there and dominated the time of possession. That really was only, Michigan's only path to victory, right? It was keeping Texas off of the field, running the ball down our throats and trying to play a, street fight type of game. And Texas did not allow them to do that. Texas came in there and punched Michigan in the mouth, and Michigan never punched back. So when you look at it, I think Texas has solely proven themselves that they have proven to the country, right? Everybody in the country, that they are undoubtedly a national championship contender. They are undoubtedly a top 2, at this point, college football team in the country. And if your football team, if you're a fan of any football team not named Georgia, the Texas Longhorns are better than your favorite football team. And even if you are a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs, we'll see next month. But as of right now, it kind of looks like Texas still might be better than your favorite football team. Texas goes into the big house and makes it their house. Texas is absolutely for real. And like Joel Klatt said, if you want to win the national championship in 2024 or in 2025, right, you're going to have to go through Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian, and the Texas Longhorns. Huge victory. And now we have another week of feeling really good about the team in the burnt orange and white. Hook 'em. Peace.